Today we are speaking with Sergeant First Class Jamie Rodriguez with the Special Operations Recruiting Battalion located at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. We will be going over some questions we received and providing some insight regarding how to start the process for becoming psychological operations soldiers and some tips on making this process as streamlined as possible. Hello, Sergeant Rodriguez, and thank you for sitting down with us today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your career up to this point?
So first, thanks for having me and my career. So I started out as 11 Bravo. I joined back in 2009. I did that for about 7 years. Did a couple of deployments, and around 2014 was the time that a lot of deployments were winding down, and I still wanted to deploy. I wanted to, feel like I was contributing in a positive manner. And so I looked at PSYOP as an opportunity to do that. And so I went to selection in 2015, and I got selected. And then in 2016, I graduated the course. I went to 6th Battalion, which is our Yukon Battalion, responsible for Europe, part of the world. And I did a couple deployments to Ukraine, Romania, Hungary, and Slovakia, so all around the Eastern Europe area. Since then, I'm now at the Special Operations Recruiting Battalion, where I help individuals get to where they are now to hopefully get to a PSYOP battalion like myself.
What advice would you give someone who is interested in applying but just don't know where to get started?
It's going to sound pretty simple, but reach out to a recruiter. Every single base in the Army has a Special Operations Recruiter. Not every base is going to have a PSYOP recruiter, but that's okay. They can still answer your questions about PSYOP and help you get to selection. And if they can't answer specific questions, they can always get a hold of a PSYOP recruiter. But the first step is, as simple as it may sound, is go to a recruiting office and start talking to a recruiter. And then from there, everything will kind of be laid out to you. The whole process of what to do, what's to follow, it'll all be spelled out for you, and it's pretty simple from there. But the first step really is to go to an office, speak to a recruiter, and making that first step is the most important.
Can you tell us about your specific story about joining this regiment?
Yeah, so like I said, I went back in 2015 to selection. I was in Hawaii. I just went to the office one day. It happened to be a day where it was a PSYOP briefing, and so I sat through the briefing. I liked what I heard, and then I asked what I needed to do next. So I completed the packet requirements, turned everything in, and then chose the date that I wanted to go to selection. And I went to selection, selection being 10 days long, go out there and do some of those events that they have you do. And then I got selected, and then went back to Hawaii and fulfilled some of those prerequisites like airborne school and stuff like that. So it was a lot simpler than I thought it was going to be. I think a lot of people think it's harder and more complicated, and there's more hurdles than you need to overcome. It's really quite simple, and I was surprised of how simple it was.
What are the most common questions you get asked?
I had to say the two most common questions are going to be what is PSYOP, and then what is the process? Like, how do I get into PSYOP, or how do I get to selection at least? So I would say those are probably the two most asked questions for sure.
Out of those questions, which do you see as the most important, and why?
The most important question is going to be what is PSYOP. And why is because it's important to have an understanding of what you're getting into before you actually commit to it. It could probably be said that a lot of people in the Army join the Army and they only have a few choices of what jobs are available, or the recruiter told them one thing about a certain job and it ended up being something else completely. And then they end up not enjoying the Army because of that experience. And the same can be said about PSYOP. If you don't have an understanding of what PSYOP is, or a misunderstanding of what PSYOP is, and then you go through the entire process and you get into PSYOP and it's completely different, you're going to be very disappointed. You're not going to enjoy the Army. You're not going to enjoy PSYOP. So it's important to know. For me, that's the most important question to ask and understand is, like, what is it?
Is the information that they seek readily available or common knowledge?
I have to say yes and no. So things like what is PSYOP, what's a day like in PSYOP, what can I expect in PSYOP, that kind of stuff is kind of hard to find. And that's, again, why you have to reach out to a recruiter and get their firsthand experience, or reach out to somebody you may know that's in PSYOP. There's not a lot of information that's out there as far as the internet is concerned, but I do actually recommend the PSYWAR podcast and the PSYWAR series on YouTube as one of the few resources that is relevant and newer information about what PSYOP is. As far as like the process and what are the requirements and all that kind of stuff, that stuff is available. It's available on our website at goarmysoft.com. It is kind of a hard website to navigate, and some of the information you might have to search for, but it is there. But again, going to the recruiter is always the best option.
What recommendations do you have for an applicant that will increase their chances of successfully trying out and being accepted?
I have to say being physically ready. I think a lot of people think that because it's PSYOP or think that because it's not Special Forces that they underestimate the physical aspect of our selection, and so they go in there thinking it's going to be easier or not as hard as they thought it was going to be. And so I think being physically ready, and once you're physically ready, usually the mental aspect that will come with being physically ready. So for me, being physically ready is very important for at least selection.
Essentially, what do you wish you knew beforehand?
I wish I had known there was going to be more academic events at selection. Obviously, we can't go into exactly what all of the events that you're going to do out there are, but having an understanding that there are going to be academic and mental aspects of selection is important. When I brief my individuals who go out there, I brief them that to expect certain academic events and to prepare mentally for that. I thought it was going to go out there and there's going to be a lot of physical stuff and like every other tryout that I've ever done, but there are academic things that you're going to do out there, and I wish I had known that going in. I really didn't have an understanding of what selection looked like. I had a slim understanding of what SAP was, but nothing about the selection process. So I wish I had known what I was getting into as far as selection was concerned a little more.
Makes sense. So basically, get your mind right before you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Like anything else in the Army, it's all a mental game. Being mentally prepared, and it goes a long way for sure.
Are there prerequisite courses that applicants need to consider or have done before putting in the application? And what are they?
I'm be honest, there's nothing that you need to have beforehand. If people aren't aware, there is a 37 X-ray program, so it allows you to join or at least go to selection as off the street. So you can get a 37 X-ray contract as a civilian and then do basic training and all that and then go to selection. So those individuals have basically zero training aside from basic training. There isn't anything that I say that is required or recommended in order to attend selection, but I will say that having some sort of Army experience does go a long way. It goes a long way in how you interact with other individuals at selection, which is a big part, teamwork. But as far as I do get the question a lot, should I be airborne already, or should I be, should I go to Ranger School first and then go to selection? I'm going to say no. What they're looking at as selection is whether you have the ability to learn what you need to learn in the Q course and be successful at PSYOP. And other schools aren't going to get you selected or not selected. So I don't particularly say there's any courses that you would need or require beforehand.
And that's good to know that PSYOP isn't looking for that initially.
Because you're going to get a lot of that training in the Q course. You're going to get a lot of that training once you get into PSYOP and you prepare for deployments and things like that. So, like I said, what they're looking for is do you have the qualities that they're looking for in order to be a good PSYOPer?
What are the basic qualifications PSYOP recruiters look for, and are waivers available for some areas?
So some of the basic qualifications are going to be your line scores. So the two big ones are going to be your GT score, and the GT score actually needs to be a 100. So people often think that it's much higher than that, but right now, as of this recording, it is a 100. And then the other big line score is going to be a PT score. So you need to have a PT score of at least a 210. Again, a lot of people think it's much higher than that, so they kind of self-select themselves before they even talk to a recruiter or look into selection. So 100 GT score, 210 PT score. Those are the two big things. Other than that, some of the qualifications are going to be, qualifiers or disqualifiers are going to be things like time and grade, time and service. So time and grade, time and service requirements. Basically, we take any rank now from E1 all the way up to E6. If you're an E5 promotable or E6, it will require a waiver. If you have more than 10 years, it'll be in active duty Army. You will have to require a waiver as well. Security clearances is actually one thing that a lot of people get hung up on. You don't need a security clearance. You just have to be eligible for one. Meaning if you've never been denied before, basically you qualify in that aspect. If you've been denied in the past, then we have some issues to overcome there, but it's not to say you're disqualified. And then physical, that is stuff that is going to be cleared when you do your SFAS or CRC physical, which is part of the packet. All that medical stuff is going to be handled by the doctor, and once that's completed and signed off, you bring it to us, and the doctor will clear you on all that stuff. Now, it's important to know that even if you do require a waiver, or you're unsure if you require a waiver or something like that, don't self-select yourself. Don't automatically discount yourself in saying that, I need a waiver, I'm not going to be able to go. That stuff we handle in the office all the time, and we handle on case-by-case basis, and we help you write up the waivers. We help you complete those waivers to the best of our ability and your ability in order to get those waivers approved. So just because you think you need a waiver, you'll be all right.
Which physical profiles do you guys accept?
So if you're on a profile, we don't accept any. So if you're on some sort of profile for previous injury or something like that, you're going to have to recover and then attend selection after you've been off of profile. Again, when you do your SFAS or CRC physical with your PA, that is something that they'll go over and they'll clear you on once you do that entire process. And you won't get medically qualified by a PA if you're on a profile. So there are medical things that we can do to overcome as far as waivers and stuff like that. If you've had a previous injury and you have plates, pins, screws in your body, or if you're a little bit lower on the hearing scale when you do your hearing test, or your vision isn't 20/20 or something like that, that's all fine. But if you're on an actual profile that limits you in any ways physically, you'll have to wait until you recover first.
I like the way you put that. You mentioned SFAS.
Yes.
What's that acronym stand for?
That's a Special Forces Assessment and Selection. That's the physical that's required to attend their selection. So there's two different physicals you can complete. They're actually both completed on the same form. It's just what series of medical tests you're going to have to complete are. But it's an SFAS physical, so the Special Forces Assessment Selection physical, or the CRC physical, which is the same physical required for SEER school. And the forms for those are DA 2808 and DA 2807-1. They both can be found on our website if for some reason your medical clinic doesn't have them. But usually if you go to your medical provider, wherever your medical provider is, you go in there and tell them you want to do an SF physical or you want to do a CRC physical for selection, they'll immediately know which physical to give you, and they'll give you the proper forms. But again, they can be found on our website if you want to get them on your own.
When building a SYOP packet, what should the successful applicant's packet contain? Like, who creates the packet, and what's the process for scheduling a selection date?
So this goes back to how I mentioned when I went through the process. Is a lot simpler than I thought. The biggest thing that we need to complete is what we just talked about, your SFAS or CRC physical. And that's the only thing that the recruiter can't really help you with or guide you in. That's going to be 100% on your own. You got to go to your medical provider, you go to your clinic, whoever does physicals at your particular post, you have to go there and complete your physical. It does take a couple weeks to complete because you got to schedule labs, you got to schedule your hearing and vision and all that kind of stuff, and then ultimately see the PA to sign off and clear you medically. So it does take a little bit of time, but that's the only thing that really requires you to do everything on your own. Once that's complete, we often tell the candidate to bring in a copy to the office, and then we'll assist them with everything else. Everything else being a volunteer statement, which is some admin data, and them signing the volunteer statement, which basically states, that they're doing this on their own accord. Nobody's forcing them to go to selection, and then understanding that there's a time requirement once you complete the qualification course. We need an SRB, which again we can print off in the office, and then a PT card. In a PT card, we issue PT tests at our recruiting office. So if you have an old PT test or it's super outdated, or your unit just isn't doing PT tests at that particular time, that's fine. We can assist you at our office and run a PT test there as well. So the volunteer statement, your physical, SRB, and a PT card. Those 4 documents are all we need to get you to selection. Now, if you need a waiver, we'll discuss that when you bring in your documents, and we'll help you with the waivers. But those 4 documents are often the only things that most candidates need. Again, a lot simpler than most people think. There is no involvement with a unit. Your commander, first sergeant, first line, nobody like that needs to sign anything or prove anything. That's all. Everything is done internally through us, and your ATAR is slotted for a selection date of your choice. We submit your packet. And I mentioned that it's a selection date of your choice. It's very important. Some people, they see the list of class dates and they want to go to a particular date because maybe they have another school they're trying to go to, or maybe they already have leave lined up and they're going to go do something. So there's a particular class date that aligns with their schedule, and that's one of the pros of doing this, is that you get to choose what date you want to go to. So
you got me almost ready to put in a packet to go PSYOP. Where can applicants potentially find the resources that will improve their odds of building a packet and completing this process successfully?
Number one is always going to be the recruiter. Always go to the source itself. The recruiter is going to give you the most up-to-date information about the packet requirements. Sometimes the line scores, the line score requirements will change, or PT requirements will change slightly by 5 or 10 points, something like that. So always go to the source, meaning the recruiter. That's always the number one resource. And then as far as learning about PSYOP and things like that, again, there's not a lot out there. A lot of the stuff is outdated. A lot of the stuff is old. A lot of stuff is sensitive, so it can't really be out there. Not just because I'm on this podcast, but because it's actually a good resource is your PSYWAR podcast, or the 8th Group YouTube page is one of the few resources out there that has new and relevant information.
Do you guys host events for interested candidates?
We do host events, and if you follow our Instagram page or Facebook or any of our social medias, that's Go Army Soft, you will see when those events are. They'll post announcements of Fort Hood is holding a PSYOP day, or Fort Bragg is holding briefs on these particular days at these particular times. So we do hold events like that, and then sometimes we'll hold larger events, large-scale recruiting events. One that's particularly coming up soon is PSYOP Day for the entire battalion, meaning every Special Operations Recruiting Battalion office is going to have like a PSYOP Day going on at the same time. Right now it's slated for the last week of March, and it's going to go 3 days long. And so people can come out to your recruiting office, and they'll have displays. We'll have PSYOP representatives, not just the PSYOP recruiters, but people from the PSYOP Regiment out there. So those are always good events to keep an eye on. So if you go to our social medias and just keep an eye out for when those will be, you can always come out to one of those.
Based on your experience, what APFT or ACFT score should applicants strive for, and what should they do to physically prepare?
So I'm going to give you 3 different scores. Number 1 being the minimum requirement. Like I mentioned, the minimum requirement right now to attend assessment selection is an APFT of 210. We do not utilize or go off of an ACFT right now. Selection does not issue an ACFT test right now. Everything that we do is off the what people call the old PT test: push-ups, sit-ups, and 2-mile run. So that's a score of 210 for that. We tell candidates that they want to be at least a 240 on the APFT. That will give them a better chance of getting selected. They'll be in better shape as far as all the other physical events they're going to complete at selection, and it'll make them a little more comfortable. And to really stand out, to really be toward the top percentage of individuals at selection, you want to be more around a 270 or above for the APFT. So those are kind of the 3 benchmarks that we tell candidates to be at. But a 210 is the minimum, 240 is where you want to try to aim for, and then 270 and above is the better portion of individuals at selection.
So, people, get in the gym, get on the track, get in shape. We've all seen shows like Surviving the Cut, and we know that you can't tell us everything, but what would you suggest?
Again, going back to the beginning, don't underestimate the physical aspect of our selection. It is not SFAS, SF selection. It is not 21 days long like their selection. That being said, it is not a walk in the park. I went to selection in 2015 as an 11 Bravo. I went to sniper school. I went to RSLIC. I went to Australian jungle school. And selection still was one of the hardest things I've done physically. So don't underestimate it. Prepare yourself, train up for selection, utilize our 4-week and 8-week prep guide that we have on our website. There's a lot of resources physically out there that'll help you get selected. Like I said, you want to be shooting for that 270 or above. When it comes to rucking, Army standard, 15-minute miles is the minimum standard you want to be meeting, and then always shoot for faster than that. Your 5-mile run pace, you want to be at least at a 45-minute 5-mile, which is slightly over 8 minutes. And again, that's at a minimum. You always want to shoot for higher than that. But those are some of the scores and some of the things to keep in mind. Is just don't underestimate it and prepare yourself physically. It's better to be over-prepared than under-prepared at selection for sure.
I couldn't agree with you more. All right. Are there any bonuses available, and how do applicants meet the qualifications?
Bonuses, my favorite topic. Everyone loves money, right? Bonuses right now are, I would consider, pretty decent by the Army standard for sure. So SYOP bonuses are Tier 9 bonuses. What that means is it's the second highest tier in the Army as far as bonuses are concerned. The number will fluctuate every once in a while. 2 to 3 times a year, they'll adjust the bonus amount really is. As far as bonuses, they always maintain at Tier 9. As of right now, the bonuses are looking like $20,000 for a 3-year reenlistment. They're $42,000 for a 4-year reenlistment, and then they are $65,000 for a 5-year plus reenlistment. Now, it's important to keep in mind that that's in addition to whatever your current contract state or your current ETS or time remaining is. So if you have 2 years remaining and you sign a 5-year reenlistment, it doesn't mean you're going to get 65. It's going to mean you're going to get the difference between 2 and 5 years, which is 3 years. And your career counselors and retention will help you figure out all those numbers. But it's important to know that you don't have to be in your window to reenlist for the SYOP bonus. And then secondly, you don't have to reenlist to go to selection. That's a big topic for some people is, they might have 7, 8, 9 months left in the Army, and they're kind of weighing on whether to get out of the Army or go to selection. And the biggest recommendation I can make for those individuals is go to selection. Go to selection now and see if you get selected. If you get selected and you come back, you reenlist, you get a halfway decent bonus, and you go to PSYOP. If you don't get selected, guess what? You're getting out of the Army in 6, 7, 8 months anyway. So nothing really changes. It's a win-win situation. So you don't have to do anything with your contract or reenlistment before going to selection. All of that is handled afterwards.
What assignment options are available for the successful applicant?
I hope everyone loves Fort Bragg because this will be home. Every SYOP battalion is located here on Fort Bragg. Selection is here, the qualification course is here, and all our battalions are here. So Fort Bragg is going to be home. With that being said, there are opportunities to go other locations for broadening assignments and other duties, and then obviously deployments as well. Some broadening assignments, obviously I'm doing a broadening assignment right now, so recruiting. You can go, I happen to be recruiting on Fort Bragg, but you can recruit at Fort Lewis, Fort Hood, Hawaii, Germany, things like that. So you can go recruit there. There are other broadening assignments that allow you to get attached to special forces groups. So wherever there's a special forces group, you could get stationed there. We have what we call SYOP planners. So they get embedded into division headquarters across the Army. So wherever there's a division headquarters, you can get stationed there. So there's still opportunities to get assigned to other locations, but the bulk of your time in SYOP is going to be at Fort Bragg, and it's important to know that. I think it's a pro. It provides stability that is not often found in the Army. Get comfortable at Fort Bragg because you'll be here a lot.
And Fort Bragg is pretty nice.
It's not so bad when you're in SYOP and when you're in SOF. It's pretty good.
What is the best way to contact you or your fellow SYOP recruiters around the country? Phone, email, smoke signals, you know.
Smoke signals is probably the most effective one for sure. GoArmySoft.com is going to provide you a list of phone numbers for each particular SORB office. So if you're in Fort Lewis and you don't know where your SORB office is, or you don't know what their phone number is, go to GoArmySoft.com and you can click on the Recruiters tab, and it'll give you the phone number for, you click the map, and then it'll give you the phone number for that location. If you're in one of those smaller locations that doesn't happen to have a big recruiting office, so I know that people in Hawaii don't have an office, so they have to contact the Fort Lewis office. And so if you go to the website, it'll tell you that. It'll guide you through that. So that's going to be the number one thing, is go to the website and get the contact info off the website. Those are good phone numbers. It's going to give you the phone numbers to the office, and then the office will be able to get you directly to a SYOP recruiter. And then from there, they'll most likely give you their direct number, like a cell phone number or something like that, so they can be reached easier. But the website's going to be your number one resource as far as how to get a hold of somebody.
From your personal experience, was it all worth it in the end?
That's going to be an overwhelming yes. Like I said, I was 11 Bravo for 7 years, and one of the other SYOP recruiters in the office, one of my guys, one of my favorite lines that he tells individuals is the worst day as a PSYOPer is still better than my best day as an 11 Bravo. The experience that I've had in PSYOP, I would never trade it for anything. The places I've gotten to go, the people I've gotten to meet, the things I've gotten to do, I never thought I was going to get to do those things and go to those places, let alone get paid for it. I wouldn't go back for anything.
All right, that wraps up this episode. And thank you again, Sergeant Rodriguez, for sitting down with us today and sharing your insight and experience.
Thanks for having me.